Kuracağız. Kuracağız. Kuracağız. Kuracağız.
S, S. Hı, tamam, o da tamam. S, S. Hı, tamam, o da tamam. Sen de dur, nereye gidiyorsun kulak? Telefondan bir bakayım, her şey stabilize mi? Oo, ben bu mesajları göremiyorum.
Empty hearts and neon lights. They're playing with my mind. Gotta get out of here tonight. Oh, I wanna run off and fly. And I'll tell myself it's fine to be alone. Just to find somewhere that finally feels like home. Oh, oh, oh. I hate all this overthinking. Oh, oh, oh.
Benim ders videom neredeydi ya? Ders videomu kaybettim. Hı. Sen şöyle kısayım, şey görebilmem için. Yedim abi. Ben nerede kalmıştım ilk gün? Neyse. Eğitim adam nerede kaldım? Şu canlı yayın ekranı. Arkaya alalım. Şu kodlarımızı açalım. Şu abimiz ne diyormuş bana?
Are made sequentially. Server-side fetching can more efficiently parallelize those requests. I'll teach you how to do these parallel requests in our build and deploy project, so keep
Dur, hazır oraya girmişken şu ayarı da yapalım. Başka bir şeyim kalmadı. Şimdi düzenle dedik verileri, küçük resim değiştir dedik. Şurada benim çektiğim güzel resimlerim olması lazım. Eyvallah, teşekkür ederim, hoş geldin canısı. Şöyle dosya 2 megabitten büyük. Bakalım hocam, özellikler. 2 megabit ya, dalga geçiyorsun. 6 kilobit ya. 6 kilobit için bunu mu yapacaksın gerçekten? Şöyle bir, neydi benimki? PNG miydi? Neyse, image compress. Şuna girelim. Select image. Şu resmi bir küçültsen hocam. Teşekkürler. Çüş. 500 kilobite kadar düşürdü 2 megabitten. Sevdim bu işi. İndirilenlerde yapıştır dedim. Oynatma listesine gerek var mı? Yok. Kaydet. Ya açtım. Ya şimdi telif muhabbeti var, o yüzden müzik de açamıyorum. Keyfi. Bunu idare edeceğiz. Müziği komple kapattım. Zaten yazılım eğitimdeyim. Senin de iyi uçuşların olsun Kasal. Çok az, çok çok az. Tamam, bir dakika. Çok çok çok. Çünkü yakın değilim aslında. Normalde bak, yakın ya tutsam böyle olacak. Şimdi yakına tutmak istemiyorum. Dediğim gibi fazla da veremiyorum. Şimdi çünkü bir de eğitime gireceğim. Amacım dediğim gibi hem kayıt almak hem de derse girmek. Bak şimdi devam ederim ben şimdi dersime bir yandan. O yüksek ihtimal o sesi bastıracaktır.
Keep watching. But this isn't just about fetching.
Ha, bak benim
You
benim
can
de sesimi
server
bastırdı.
render any other calls. Maybe a direct database call to Prisma to get the list of posts. Or even with Mongoose and MongoDB, like this. That's the beauty of Next.js.
Ya Next.js eğitimindeyim dedim. En azından bir hazır izindeyim. Zaten bunun için izin aldım, ayrı mesele de. Next.js'e girelim dedim. Hazırda boş vaktim var. Pardon, yanlış ekran, yanlış ekran. Allah Allah, yanlış sahne değiştiriyorum ya. Valla bir bakayım, ben temelini alayım. Zaten şey yaparım ya, kaynak atarım. Türk kaynaklarının anlatımı hiç hoşuma gitmedi. Yabancılar bakıyorum 4 saatlik 5 saatlik güzel videolar atıyor. Abi dedim, neden olmasın? Ya mesela bak, ilk yaptığım projemi göstereyim sana. Biraz dandik ama dur. Hocam API yoluyla sunucumdan veri çekmeye çalıştım. Pilot eğer ETS rankı 1 ise sistemi çektirmiyor, diyor ki boş veriyor. Ama diğerleri 1, 2, 3, 4 diye listeleniyor ve gidiyor IVAO'dan resim çekiyor. Bence yani ilk baştaki API sistemime göre güzel. Ya işte biraz daha profesyonel bir ekran yapacağız inşallah. Daha zamanımız var. Neyse. Sana da kolay gelsin. Ben devam edeyim şuna. Tabii mesajım geldi. Merhabalar. 222 lira borcunuz bulunmaktadır. Ya ben şimdi zaten moralim bozuldu. Oo, bir dakika. Devlet desteği sonrası 97 lira. İşte bu be, işte bu. Mutlu olun. Şu an mutlu olun. Borcum 97'ye düşmüş. Aa, detay sayfası yapmışım en son. Sebebi 101 ama sonra bırakmışım. Güzel. Neyse. Sana devam edelim. Nerede kalmıştım? Dersim nerede benim?
This is achievable because these components are React server components, which allow you to access server-related resources directly.
Baba gel, yarın sınavım var, arkada çizim açık. Tamam, IVAO'dan demek istedin. Hallederiz, hallederiz. Ya bir şey yok ama zaten bir şey yazmam herhalde ya. Dediğim gibi ben de eğitimdeyim. Tamam, sana da kolay gelsin, iyi uçuşlar tekrardan.
This means we can make direct database calls instead of needing to create an API and then fetch that API once again. And if you're still not convinced, you can always go for client-side fetching. How? Just add use client to the top, bring back the use effects, the use states, and you're all set. Next.js will allow you to do whatever you think is best. And let's be honest, this is how we all used to use Next.js when we first transitioned over from React. It only feels natural, but it is the wrong way to use Next.js. And that's what made me create the whole Ultimate Next.js course in the first place, to teach Next.js the right way. But now take a moment to test both client-side and server-side rendering. You'll notice the differences I mentioned, such as seeing the blank page initially with client-side rendering, or if you inspect its source and see that nothing is there, or client-side not functioning at all if you disable JavaScript. In contrast, server-side fetching will still display the results even if JavaScript is turned off in the browser. I have to tell you a bit about API routes. Enough with front-end stuff, optimization, caching, performance, and all that. It's time for some backend work. If you've ever done some backend, even creating a simple hello world from server message requires a fair bit of setup. It involves setting up a project, installing necessary packages like Express for Node, writing server code, setting up Express, the port, and then making that port listen, running it, and then deploying it using some paid or free service so you can finally use it on the front end. It might not seem like a big deal when you're just reading or looking at the code, but things quickly start getting complicated when you have to write various routes, middlewares, and so on. But in the newest version of Next.js, it's super simple, much closer to what we did on the front end. You just create a special file within a folder for the specific route, and you're all set. There's no need to set up, manage, or monitor an active server separately. If you want to show the same message, hello world from backend, in Next.js, you simply need to create a folder with any name and then create a special file named route.ts inside it. From there, you can immediately begin writing server code. Export async function get, return response.json, message hello world from backend. That's all there is to it. Your folder name serves as your API route name. With your business logic neatly encapsulated within this special route file. If you now go to the browser, modify the URL, and add hello world to it, you'll see hello world from backend as a response. But how can you create other API endpoints like post, patch, delete, and more? Well, for that, let's create a book endpoint with a
Küçük bir kahve alacağım. Kahve lazım. Güzel bir gün. Ben nerede kalmıştım? Şuradan dersimize girelim. Pull up, pull up. Ne oluyor sen? Gerçek. Ben mesela şeyi nereden görüyordum onu hatırlamıyorum da. Yani mesela biri takip etti. Ben bu bildirimi nereden alacağım ya da nereden göreceğim? Erişim değil, etkinlik değil, kitle hiç değil. Aşırı garip. Ben tahmin edeceğim herhalde. Tamam onu da ayarladık. Yavaş mod falan yok. Canlı yorum onaylanan kullanıcılar gerek yok. Canlı tepkiler ya. Canlı sohbet. Bunlar ya. Çok biraz saçma bir ekranı var ya da ben salam şu an anlamadım. Daha fazla göster. Şuna gir. Analizler. Yine aynı sayfa. Activity fit desek açılım ben geldim ama şeyden o. Dashboard. Neyse. Şu anda her şey okey. Ben şeyime devam edeyim. Eğitimime devam edeyim.
Local array as a database. A common practice when creating route handlers is to create a folder called API and write all the routes inside it. So create this API folder in the app directory and add a database file for storing some dummy books. Then you can create two routes, get and post, in app API books route.tsx. These are nested routes similar to what you explored previously in the routing part for the UI. For the delete and put, you'll have to create dynamic route handlers. And you already know how to do that. App API books and then dynamic square brackets ID / route.ts. And inside of it, you can export async function put for the update request and then export async function delete for the delete request. And then you can add the logic. So far, this feels good. Similar to what we did with UI routes, but this time for writing server code and creating APIs. So let's test them one by one to see if they work or not. And there you go. Everything works perfectly. This is how route handlers or APIs work in Next.js. It's super simple and straightforward. And the creation of APIs in Next.js was nice, but how can you use them on the UI? Well, it's a simple fetch. Just create a books route real quick and call the get API route to fetch the content. Const response, await fetch, localhost 3000 API books. You get them from the response, set them to the state, and render them. If you visit the books route, you'll see all of your books. As easy as it could be, thanks to the serverless architecture of Next.js and React 19 React Server components. And let's talk about caching. Caching isn't new, but in Next 16, it's been completely reworked. So what is caching? It simply means storing data temporarily, so it can be reused instead of refetched or re.
Selamünaleyküm Baybars hocam. Sen şimdi adminsin, sen ekibi görürsün. Doruk Kavas diye biri geldi mi ekibe? Tamam. Şey yanlış, IVAO yanlış girmiş galiba. Onu da hani tanıyorsan yazabilirsin kendisine. ZZZ gözüküyor. Şu anda Sakar üzerinde. Şey yok hani rota bilgileri yok, remark yok, root yok, hiçbir şey yok. Ya daha yeni açmış tamam da işte yine de söyleyeyim dedim haberiniz olsun.
Sen hatta PM atsana kanka sen.
Yo, nasıl satacağım onu?
Nokta chat boşluk svv 1111 diyor.
Nokta chat. Aslında biz bunu testini yapmıştık. Merhabalar. Rotanız gözükmüyor. Tamam ona yazdım o dönüş yapar. Bir kapataç yapsa belki çözülür. İva. Tamamdır. Kolay gelsin ben şey diyeyim. Aşağıdayım. Bye bye. New Sky'dan bir bakalım. Var mı bir plan? Aa var. Aa şey yanlış girmiş. İva da yanlış girmişti. Ya neyse bu kadar çabalıyorum ya. Dönüş yapar o. Güzel bir sabah, güzel bir sabah. Ay neyse.
Built. In Next.js, caching happens across multiple layers. There's a browser cache, which saves static files locally. There's the server cache, which stores pre-rendered pages and API responses. And then there's the data cache, which remembers fetch data to avoid repeat requests. Together, they make your app feel instant. So let's talk about the new caching model. See, the old modes like the SSG, ISR, and PPR still exist, but now they're just outcomes of how you define cache boundaries, not separate settings. You no longer choose SSR or SSG, you simply define what gets cached, and Next.js handles the rest. You can enable this new system by simply adding an additional flag to your next config. Caching is disabled by default, so you must explicitly decide what to cache. Like use client or use server, you can mark routes, components, or even functions with use cache. This tells Next.js to store and reuse the output if inputs haven't changed. For example, you can define it on a file level, component level, as well as on a functional level. Simply placing use cache at the top of a layout or a page pre-renders it at build time, stores it in memory, and then revalidates it automatically every 15 minutes by default. If you want to fine-tune how cache works, there's the cache life method, which controls for how long data stays cached. You can write it something like this: use cache at the top, import cache life, and then define cache life maybe hours, which is going to cache the data below it for 1 hour. You can also define custom lifetimes in your config, and you can also use cache tag to group cached items for easier invalidation. Cache life controls when to clear, and cache tag controls what to clear. To refresh constant instantly, you can just use revalidate or revalidate tag. Now, when talking about caching, we also have to talk about partial pre-rendering, or PPR. See, with cache components option enabled, you don't need PPR set to true. Static parts marked with use cache are pre-rendered automatically, while dynamic parts stream in with React Suspense. The takeaway here is that this is a completely new caching mindset. Same principles, different syntax. It will take some time to adjust, but once you do, it'll give you precise control and better performance. Let's just hope that we don't see use in next. Jokes aside, I already started working on the new caching module within the Ultimate Next.js course. But now, let's talk about something even newer, a feature that'll make deployment and scaling way more flexible. After v16 of Next.js, we also have build adapters. They're currently in alpha, and it's a big deal for everyone using Next. Until now, the Next.js build process was tightly connected to how Vercel worked behind the scenes. That made sense. Vercel created Next, but things are changing. With the new Build Adapters API, you and hosting providers can hook directly into the build pipeline and customize it. Think of an adapter as a small bridge that teaches Next.js how to build for different environments. Adapters can modify your Next.js config before build time, transform the final build output, or adjust how your app runs depending on where it's hosted, be it Vercel, AWS, Cloudflare, Netlify, or even your own server. This means zero config deployments on any platform, environment-specific optimizations, and most importantly, freedom. Because now you're not tied to just one provider. It's the start of a more open and flexible Next.js ecosystem, so it's definitely something to keep an eye on. One final thing I want to teach you before you're ready to start creating your Next.js application, and that is search engine optimization. Specifically, how we use metadata in Next.js to improve our SEO. And when I mention metadata, I'm referring to the look and feel of our website when we share it with others on messaging platforms or post it on social media platforms or on internet in general, like for example in search engines. In today's world, we need to ensure that our content is shareable. So there are two ways in which we can manage metadata in our Next.js application. The first one is config-based. All you have to do is create a JavaScript object in the layout or any kind of page file and export it. Next.js will automatically detect it and turn it into relevant meta tags for those routes. Something like export const metadata is equal to, and then in there you can provide all sorts of different SEO properties, such as title, description, thumbnail, and more. Because it's higher on the priority list, it'll override the default specified in the global layout. This allows you to either define unique metadata for each route or rely on the metadata from the root layout. It's entirely up to you. But everything we discussed so far is just static metadata. Means that it's not going to change. Home is always going to be home. But there are also going to be cases in which you want to create dynamic metadata based on some kind of content on the page, such as a blog title. It's super simple. The only thing you have to do is export a new async function called generate metadata, which gets access to params. Params being the same params that we had before from dynamic routes. You can extract the ID or the name or anything else. Based on that ID, you can get full resource details or user profile details, whatever it is. Then you can use those details to formulate SEO title, descriptions, thumbnails, and more, and you can simply return a dynamic object of all of these properties. That's it. As simple as that. Are you with me so far? Good. And the other way in which we
Her şeyi yaptık, şunu unuttuk. Basın. Ha, sınava giren Kaan abimiz. Neyse.
Dalaman Tower, iyi günler. Burası Skywalk 732. Batum için uçuş planımızın olayını karar veriyoruz.
Skybok. Dur şunu unuttum. Skybok 732 efendim. Merhabalar. Hoş geldiniz Kaan hocam. Uçuş planınız onaylandı. Bu Van Juliet ile 01 pisti kalkışınız olacak. İlk irtifanız 8000 fit. Transponder 1732.
Bir Van Juliet ile kalkışımız olacak. Öncelikle irtifa 8000 fit. Transponder 173. Devamını alamadım.
Transponder'ınız 1732.
1732 alındı. Skywalk 732.
Skybok 732 efendim. Geri okumanız tamamen doğru. Pushback ve motor çalıştırma ikaz olsun.
Pushback motor çalıştırma ikaz olacak. Skywalk 732.
Can set metadata in Next.js is file-based metadata. As the name suggests, you can put files like a robot, sitemap,
Dalaman Skywalk 732 pushback için hazır.
Skywalk 732 efendim pushback ve motor çalıştırmanız onaylandı. Yönünüz güney olsun. Güneş 1017.
Yüzümüz güney olacak. 9 motor çalışma gerekli. Serbest. Güneş 101 Skywalk 732.
sitemap, favicon, open graph images, or other site icons directly inside the app folder, and Next.js will automatically detect and generate corresponding meta tags.
Dalaman
For example,
Tower 732 taksi için hazır.
Skywalk 732 efendim eko bekleme 01 eko bekleme noktasına Delta 1 ve Foxtrot ile taksi serbest.
01 Eko bekleme noktasından Delta 1 ve Foxtrot'ta taksi servis Skywalk 732.
example, you can have an app and then a favicon and then an icon and then an open graph image, Twitter image. All of these properties will get added to your meta tags. It's just about adding the files with the right names. They have to be proper names directly inside the app folder. It'll work out the same as the config-based approach. You can find a full list of all files that can be created to define metadata here. But for the time being, I still prefer creating it by exporting the config file from layouts or individual pages. And it's worth noting that file-based metadata has a higher priority and will override any config-based metadata. So if you set it in a file, it'll be used instead of the ones that you set in the configuration. So now you know how to make your apps shareable, SEO optimized, and search engine crawlable. With that in mind, I think you're ready. First, there was a lot of theory, and then there was more theory disguised in this practical part, but now you're ready to dive into code. You're ready to dive right in and build and deploy your Next.js app with all of these optimizations, performance updates, and new features baked right into it. And now comes the more exciting and hands-on part of this crash course. While understanding the theory is essential, knowing how to apply it is what truly sets you apart. So let's put everything you've learned into action by building and deploying dev events. At first, it might seem like a boring application. Just 2 pages where users can browse upcoming events, view details, and book a spot by entering their email, like a newsletter sign-up. But I've chosen this idea for a reason. Behind that clean, modern UI lies a full-stack learning experience. See, by building this app, you'll get practical exposure to file-based routing, React server components, client versus server components to understand when and why to use each, database modeling, where you can design and structure backend data layer, API routes that you can build and connect your frontend to them, server actions to perform server-side mutation securely. You'll also apply the new use cache caching model for instant updates, and then we'll also track the analytics of our platform to understand how our users interact with it. This project will walk you through design, development, and deployment, all the core stages that bring any application to life. So let's dive right in. To start developing your app with the framework used by some of the world's largest companies, we can start with a single command: npx create next app at latest. But first, we have to set up our coding
Skywalk 732 efendim kalkabilirsiniz. Delta veya Charlie bekleme noktalarını alabilirim sizleri.
Hemen bakıyorum performansımıza. Delta'dan kalkabiliriz. Delta'dan pis yeterli gibi duruyor.
Anlaşıldı Skywalk 732 Delta bekleme noktasına taksi serbest.
Delta beklemek noktasına devam ediyoruz. Skywalk 732.
Skybok 732 efendim 01 pistine giriş kalkış serbest. Rüzgarımız 170 1 knot şimdilik.
01 giriş kalkış serbest. Skybolt 7-3.
Environment so that we can actually paste that command somewhere. I'll be using WebStorm as my IDE, as of recently, it became completely free for non-commercial use. I'll leave the link down in the description so you can download it and try it out too. Once you open it up, you'll be able to quickly create a new project. I'll start with an empty project and name it Next.js Crash Course. Create
Skybok 732 efendim iyi yolculuklar dilerim. İyi uçuşlarınız olsun Kaan Hocam. Unicom'a bağlantı sağlayabilirsiniz. 1228.
Teşekkür ediyorum. Unicom 128'e devam ediyorum. Servisin teşekkürler.
created and open it up. Then you can open up the built-in integrated terminal and paste the command you just copied. But make sure to add a dot at the end, which will make sure that the application gets installed within your current folder. And then it'll ask you whether you would like to use the recommended Next.js defaults.
VC molasını bir kaçayım ben.
Such as TypeScript, ESLint, Tailwind CSS, App Router, and TurboPack, to which we'll say yes, this is the exact tech stack that we're using. Then it'll proceed with installing the necessary dependencies, which there are very that we're using. Then it'll proceed with installing the necessary dependencies, which there are very few of, such as React, React DOM, and Next, and then also dev dependencies from TypeScript and the corresponding types over to Tailwind CSS and ESLint. Once it installs, you can run npm run dev to run it on your localhost 3000, and then open it up. We get this new and updated
Efendim,
Alo.
efendim, iyi günler, iyi görevler dilerim şimdiden.
İyi günler, iyi sabahlar.
Bakıyorum da biraz yine başlamışsınız erkenden açmaya sektörünüzü.
2 saat kalacağım, ondan sonra duruma göre bakacağım ya.
Öyleyse o zaman ne diyelim. Neyse bir selam vereyim dedim sizlere. Hadi kolay gelsin.
Teşekkür ederim. Size de iyi sektörler.
Sağ olun, teşekkürler.
Dated boilerplate page, which looks even simpler than before, and it says, looking to get started, just edit the page.tsx file. So let's explore the app structure. You can see that not a lot has changed. We still have this page, which contains the bulk of the content. So let's go ahead and remove all of it and just run RAFCE to quickly spin up a new React error function and just run bulk of the content. So let's go ahead and remove all of it and just run RAFCE to quickly spin up a new React error function component with exports. React imports are no longer necessary, so we can just say welcome to Next.js 16. If this command didn't work for you, you can head over to your plugins or packages and search for React snippets. In this case, I'm using modern React snippets. If you made the changes, you should be able to see that now it says just welcome to Next.js 16 on your localhost 3000. Now, throughout this course, I'll teach you how to build a dev event Next.js application. I found this to be the perfect project to go over all the primary, but also the latest Next.js functionalities. So together, we'll explore what Next.js has to offer while building a couple of these beautifully designed and fully mobile responsive pages. Of course, the focus of this course is the main star of the show, which is Next.js, so we don't need to focus too much on the CSS. For that reason, in the description down below, you'll be able to find a complete media kit containing the link to the Figma design which you can explore and rebuild on your own if you want to, a complete source code, as well as some snippets that are going to make the building of our application easier, allowing us to copy very lengthy and redundant presentational stuff and allow us to focus only on what matters. So let's start with copying this globals.css file and then heading over within our application, app, globals.css,